Congressman, I think the question also is the budget route, the proper mechanism to return those funds to PhilHealth, because some people are concerned that by doing this, by just returning it to the national budget, parang hindi na po ma-hold accountable those allegedly involved in diverting those funds and who allegedly profited from that.
Pauline, the issue here, the petition of the Supreme Court, in fact, when they had the ruling, the issue was actually came out on the concern, questioning the validity of the issuance, and not really to find culpability or liability or criminality on the part, say, for example, in the executive department, and to be particular, the DOF. Actually, the Supreme Court actually denied the petition to find culpability and liability on the part of Secretary Recto. I'm not defending Secretary Recto because he can defend himself. But what I'm saying is that this is an issue of a constitutional concern. This is a constitutional question, and the only institution that has the power and mandate to assess, to review constitutionality is the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court came out with that decision, denying the petition's request to find liability, because the issue really is the validity of the issuance rather than finding fault whoever is responsible for the transfer of the 60 billion pesos. So if the higher court unanimously decide on that, who am I to find fault on whoever is in charge? So my point is that this is a constitutional issue. The Supreme Court has already released the decision, finding constitutionality, yung question of constitutionality na hindi dapat po pwede na itanggalin sa PhilHealth because this is taken out directly from the sin taxes, which will be, according to Universal Health Coverage Act, will be used by PhilHealth to lower the premium or to increase the premium, or to expand the coverage or lower the premium. Ang nagkangyari kasi dito in 2000, way back 2005, when we had 2004, there was an issue of idle funds by the PhilHealth. Hindi nila ginagamit. They're not actually increasing their coverage. They're not lowering their premiums.
But okay, first of all, that idle funds has been disputed already. It's not really idle funds. It's the reserves of PhilHealth, which by law should only go to the Universal Healthcare Act, right? Which was misappropriated according to the Supreme Court. But anyways, let me press you a little bit on Pauline's point, because, okay, sure, it may be legal, but is it moral? Right? Is it ethical? I think you would have seen Cardinal Ambo David's commentary at this point. He said it's unacceptable because ultimately it's still the taxpayers footing the bill. That 255 in savings, in quote-unquote savings that you're talking about from DPWH, that also comes from tax money, right? So let me quote Cardinal David here. Says, kami na nga, taong bayan na nga ninakawan, kami pa rin yung magbabayad. Right? How is this not a kind of double jeopardy, he says? And I would tend to agree, because it's, the only way it would not be jeopardy, it would be if the money that was used to restore the fund would have come from the restitution from the flood control scandal, right? Otherwise, it's still our taxes that's footing the bill.
I completely understand, and I agree. That there has to be. That's why the reason why we had this rectification and retribution in order that we can actually address the concern of the public. I completely understand yung frustration. So I cannot, for example, give you direct answer, because again, I cannot and I will never attempt to even defend Secretary Recto, because he's more than qualified and more than capable of defending himself. I think my take on that is that on the issue of the idle funds, it was actually, for me, my understanding, the way I see it, is actually a sort of like a call of judgment, because the country needs to get more revenue in order that we can implement programs and projects, and so there is already that excess funds in the PhilHealth, which, by the way, hasn't been used specifically, purposely, supposedly, is to increase and expand the coverage and lower the premiums. Hindi nila nagagawa yun. That's why we had the investigation. How come meron kayong excess and yet hindi nagagamit at hindi nararamdaman ng ating taong bayan. Maybe it's a call of judgment call on the part of the secretary. That's why we need more funding for these programs, and yet there's that available funds, which is billions of pesos, that it's not doing anything, no? Nandun lang nakatabi. So I think that's
Kong,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yes.
actually, kinausap na, tinanong na si Secretary Recto nung finance chair pa siya. Ang
Okay.
sinabi niya kasi, ay fina-follow lang niya yung provision, yung 1D, the fourth provision that was added, that allowed him to do that. And who added that provision was actually the House of Representatives.
Yes, the reason why I was actually explaining to you that there was an investigation conducted by both the Senate and the House of Representatives regarding the excess funds of PhilHealth, because they are not lowering, they are not actually expanding the premiums, which basically is what the purpose of that funding is for, according to universal health coverage. So kaya nga po nagkaroon ng ganong investigation is precisely to prod PhilHealth to use that, itong funding na ito. So I think again, when it comes to using and implementing programs, ongoing programs by the government, we still need more available funds that we can actually tap in order to continue on funding big ticket projects and programs. Again, that's actually where the story started. So again, going back to the issue, to the question of Sean, I completely agree with the frustration of the public. I think it's good now that the Supreme Court has already stated specifically on what actually is the parameter by which funding, especially for the use of GOCCs or health insurance, na dapat may parameters at may talagang klaro na legal na dapat nabatayan para hindi na ito magamit. So I completely agree, and I understand the frustration of the public. That's why even prior to the issuance of the Supreme Court's decision, the House of Representatives already restored the 60 billion pesos for PhilHealth's next year budget. From 53 billion, we have already added 60 billion pesos. That's amount to 100 plus billion pesos for 2026.
The Supreme Court didn't just set parameters for how the funds can be used. It also issued a very strongly worded decision on the matter. And it rendered the provision unconstitutional and illegal. Is the House of Representatives, feeling any remorse about it at all? Is this prompting any sort of soul searching about the kinds of laws that you guys are enacting?
Actually, I believe, personally, I cannot speak for the entire House, I believe that legislation goes hand in hand with the experience of man. And because of this decision of the Supreme Court, it actually add up to a lesson, you can say, and by which we are guided now this time on how we can appreciate funding, and so far as appropriating funding for each agency is concerned. So I cannot speak for the entire House. What I can tell you is that this is actually a lesson learned.